Texas A&M's different style of running back and depth at the position heading into next season has this room in a great spot for Coach Mike Elko.
You are Locked On Aggies, your daily podcast on the Texas A&M Aggies. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome on in to Locked On Aggies. I'm your host, Andrew Stefaniak. Thanks for making Locked On Aggies your first listen every single day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more right now. New customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. Happy Friday, everybody. No, I'm excited. I know y'all are excited. It's almost the weekend. Playoff NFL football coming up. It's a good weekend, ladies and gentlemen. It's a good weekend coming up. But today, I want to break down why I am extremely excited about Texas A&M's running back room. I was breaking it down, and, a running back room, as any position group on the football field, you want to have different styles of running back, different types of players. You want depth. You want to have all that. And this Texas A&M running back room has that. So, last season, all three of the running backs that played significant snaps proved that they could catch the football out of the backfield. But you bring in E.J. Smith in the portal, and I'll tell you, watching the film on him, I really like the way that he can do it all in the backfield. He is an elite pass catcher, and I think that might be the role you see him used in this Texas A&M running back room. And then you've got Amari Daniels and Ruben Owens. Those guys, to me, they're the shiftier guys. They're the make you miss an open field guy on first and second down. They can also catch the football, as can Le'Veon Moss. They can all do it. But we saw him do it last year, and what I saw from them, what I saw from E.J. Smith, I just think E.J. Smith looks a little more natural doing it. And then Le'Veon Moss is it's 3rd and 1, here he comes, watch out guy. I think that Le'Veon Moss is running back 1 this year. And, he missed the bowl game with some personal reasons, but, it sounds like all is good with Le'Veon Moss. I mean, I assume, all is good with Le'Veon Moss, and he'll be good to go. But I like the way this room is shaping up. I think that heading into last season, we had a lot of question marks about this running back room. Who's going to do what? Do you have enough depth? And frankly, last year was a little different because I know you had David Bailey, but if you really think about it, it was just these three guys. And think about it. Le'Veon Moss was in another lineup all year. Ruben Owens was a freshman. There was a lot going on in the running back room last year. And now you've got Ruben Owens back, and he is growing up. He's an older player. You got Amari Daniels back and Le'Veon Moss back. And then you bring in E.J. Smith. So you've got 4 running backs. And, like I said, Ruben Owens was a freshman, so of course he's still he was a 5-star. We expected him to be great last year, but he was still a freshman, So what I'm saying is you got a group of 4 guys who can play the position. 4 guys that if someone were to go down could be the running back 1 in this offense. And I think that's good to have. Running back is a position it's football. Every position is a position where players can get banged up easily, but running back, you're getting tackled in every single play. And so I feel good about this room, knowing where it's at right now. I was a little concerned knowing that there wasn't a running back in the recruiting class, because I kind of said to myself, I'm like, okay, if you don't bring a running back in the portal, we're doing the same thing over again. We're pretty much running the back with these 3 guys and saying, hope it works out well, And then you're an injury away from being down to two good running backs. And so bringing in EJ Smith, I still don't love. Okay. I still don't love not taking a running back in the recruiting class, but, and you never know. You never know. Maybe they'll sign somebody last second. You never know. But I don't like not taking a position group in the recruiting class just because that's how you build your future depth. You don't want to. I'm very happy that Coach Elko is using the portal because he had to, based on where this roster is at, and he has killed it in the portal. He's done an outstanding job. But I don't want to be the team that relies on transfer portal additions. You want to be the team that develops high school talent. And then, if some of the players you brought in aren't developing like you had hoped and imagined, then you go bring in a player in the portal. That's, I think, the way you use it, which is going to happen to where you're still going to bring in 10, 15 guys in the portal every year. But I would have liked to have seen a running back in the class, but bringing in EJ Smith makes me feel better about the room as a whole and where the room is at. So I'm happy with the running back room, ladies and gentlemen. I was thinking about this morning. I was like, what position group should we kind of break down early? Because we'll obviously do more breakdowns ahead in the spring when we hear more about how these guys are doing. And I feel good about this room. There's a lot of talent in that room, a lot of different styles of running, and that's so important. Having running backs who do different things. Same with receivers who do different things. Tight ends, you want to have your blocking tight ends. You want to have your pass catching tight ends and your hybrid tight ends. You want to have your guys who can do it all. On the D line, you got to have your pass rushers. You got to have your guys who are there to stop the runs, to get after the quarterback. When it comes to playing football, players have different skill sets and different responsibilities and different, like, hey, this is my job. This is what I do well. All of these running backs do things a little different. Like I said, I think Ruben Owens and Amari Daniels are your shiftier guys. Your quicker guys can make people miss. EJ Smith can be your third down technician, but he can also run the football if you need him to. And then Le'Veon Moss is your bulldozer guy that's going to get a lot of carries, a lot of touchdowns, and I think really be the guy for this team. I think that, it's going to be interesting how when you have a lot of talented running backs like this roster now does, how does everybody is everybody going to eat? It's going to be interesting to see how much they kind of share the ball and use these different guys. I mean, that's going to be it's going to be an interesting conversation. How much is Coach Collin Klein going to use this guy and this guy and this guy? What situations are you going to use this running back? Do you have certain plays for this guy? But, I mean, when you have, like I said, running backs with different skill sets, that is a thing you can do. You can say, okay, we're going to use you here and you like this and you like this. That is a positive for me. So I feel good about this room heading into next season. I think that Coach Klein is going to find a way to better use the running backs and get the most out of the running game. His rushing attack at Kansas State was great. We talked about how I didn't love Texas A&M's rushing attack last year. I don't know if it was coaching or just offensive line blocking or running backs not finding holes or a little bit of everything. But regardless, it wasn't where it needed to be last season. And I think Coach Klein is going to come in and fix that immediately. So I'm excited about this running back room. I want y'all to let me know in the YouTube comments, how do you think these guys are going to be used? Who are you most excited to see? How do we feel about this running back room as a whole? I'm really excited to see, and that's the thing is, like, I think Le'Veon Moss is going to have a great year, and I'm kind of excited to see sophomore year Ruben Owens. But I think all these guys are going to be helpful and going to be really good. I mean, Amari Daniels is really good. EJ Smith is good. That's the thing. They're all good players. So it's like they're all going to see the field and they're all going to succeed. It's hard to pick one guy that I think is going to, really separate himself except for Le'Veon Moss. I think the real question mark is beside Le'Veon Moss is who of these other guys is going to separate themselves and kind of solidify a large role. So let me know y'all's thoughts on the running back room in the YouTube comments. I'm very curious to hear what y'all have to say about that room. The spring game. about 3 months away. What are some goals for this Texas A&M football team heading into that? I'll tell you what my number one goal is: strength and conditioning. This team needs to get bigger, faster, and stronger heading into the spring game. We'll talk about that coming up right here on Locked On Aggies. But I want to tell you about our wonderful friends over at FanDuel Sportsbook. The NFL regular season is wrapping up, but there's still time to get in on the action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. That's $150 in bonus bets, win or lose. The app is so easy to use, and there are so many different ways to bet, like live game parlays. You can find bets in the Explore tab that show you different bets you could place. You can make a parlay in the Parlay Hub, which is the best way to find parlays that different people like. There's a ton you can do in the FanDuel app. It's easy to use. They make it fun. They make it simple. I love the FanDuel app. I use it when I'm wagering on sports. It's fun, and the app is so well put together that it makes your life easier when you're trying to decide what you want to bet on, whether it's a parlay or a straight bet or whatever it is. Visit FanDuel.com/locked on and make your first bet a layup. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL and the Locked On Podcast Network. So the spring game is not coming up. Coming up's a strong word, but, somewhat. And I want it to be coming up because that means it's warming up, and that's exciting. But I've got 6 goals here for this Texas A&M roster for the spring game, to achieve between now and the spring game, about 3 months. Last year was on the 15th of April. It's January 12th, so, about around 3 months. Number 1, as I said, is strength and conditioning. This team needs to use all of this time, the entire offseason, to get bigger, faster, stronger in the weight room. Like I said, this is your opportunity to do it. I think Coach Moffitt, we talked about how much of a weapon he's going to be for this Texas A&M football team. And I think that this is an opportunity for these players. They're going to have a program, use that program, and get after it. One of the most exciting times of the season, and it'll be obviously a show when we get there, but is when they update the roster and it's like, this guy put on 13 pounds of muscle. This offensive line cut 13 pounds of good weight and then put back on 8 pounds or cut 15 pounds of bad weight and put on 13 pounds of good weight. Those numbers are so fun to talk about, to break down. And, this is the time where those gains are made. I think that this is an opportunity for this team. Texas A&M can win football games next season right now. You want to know why that is? And it's something I said all the time. Strength and conditioning isn't just about bench pressing 750 pounds like I can. Strength and conditioning is about getting your body in shape to be able to stay healthy. It plays a huge role in keeping players on the field. Strength and conditioning is a massive part of that. So what does that mean? That means that this is Texas A&M's opportunity to, stretch, lift, run, get yourself in the proper game shape so that you don't get those injuries. And I'm not talking about, a freak snap a bone in half. That stuff's not, but I'm talking about hamstring injuries or even, ankle turns. I'm serious. Like you can stretching and having your body in the right shape can prevent like injuries like that. But the ones I'm really talking about are like hamstrings and different things like that. You can have yourself in great shape and help prevent injuries. There's obviously freak injuries. We all know that. But being in good shape and really dialing in on strength and conditioning helps players stay on the field and stay healthy. It's just a fact. So, we talked about, I had someone comment, and it was so interesting. It was such a good question. This was forever ago, but like Andrew, do you think that poor strength and conditioning could be why we have so many injury problems all the time? And I'm like, and I tried to kind of do some digging on that, and I really couldn't find much. But it was a great question, a really interesting thing to look up and research on. And I couldn't find anything. But I mean, I think, what I can tell you is I think the answer is yes. I do think that injuries can lead to a poor strength conditioning, or poor strength and conditioning programs can lead to injuries. So that's my number one goal. Coach Moffitt is to get these guys a program, get these guys going so that they're making gains, they're getting in better shape as the season comes up, which will help them, get stronger, bench press more, squat more, but also more importantly, stay on the football field without some of those, silly hamstring, different injuries like that. So this is where you win football games right now. And that's why I think having Coach Moffitt makes this football team so much better. Number two I have here is culture. And, you might say, well, Andrew, that's such a culture. Blah, who cares? No one cares. I think culture is so important. We all know what it means to be a part of Texas A&M. And you got a lot of new faces. You're going to have new faces coming in the recruiting class. You're going to have new faces coming in via the portal. A lot of new faces are heading to College Station. So what does that mean? You've got to get this group tight. That's one thing I always say when I talked about, last offseason. I was like, I don't love the way that Lane Kiffin handles his business when it comes to transfer portal and different stuff like that. And I don't I didn't because you have a lot of playing football. It's your brothers, your teammates, your buddies for life, and you got that connection. And it's hard to build that when 50%, 70% of your roster turns over every season. So, I think that, like I said, Coach Elko's goal isn't to live and die by the portal every year. I think he knows he had to do that this season, and he's knocking that out of the ballpark right now. But I think the goal in the future is going to be to recruit high school well, so he doesn't have to do that, and there's not as much roster turnover except for the young guys coming in the recruiting class, and then filling in whatever needs you really need via the portal. But this season for sure, you got a lot of guys coming in. So I think that you got to get those new faces connected. So it sounds like, I know that's not a football thing. That's not an X's and O's or a strength and conditioning. I get that. But I do think it is important. And then number three, we're not going to spend a lot of time on this one, but it's develop. I mean, this is a time you can, I know there's not a ton of actual practices and stuff like that, but this is a time where you can, as players, you can look at tape, you can work on things. You can see, okay, what did I do well last year? What did I not do well last year? And I've got to improve on that. I got to get better at that. The next thing, number four I have here, all these players got to learn a new system. They got to learn a new offensive and defensive system right now. So get started on that. Get going on that. We hear people talk about that all the time. Well, it's hard to learn a new system. We're having to learn a new offense. Well, let's get going. Let's do it now. I don't want to do it. Don't do it in 5 months. Do it now. Don't do it in 4 or 5 months. Let's get going. Let's do it right now. And that is what I'm kind of saying here is like, hey, let's learn this offense. Let's learn this defense so that when we get to spring practice and the spring game and into summer practices and into all this, you know the offense. You understand it. This is your opportunity to learn this stuff. And then I have for number five, and it's kind of funny because I talked about it a little bit with culture, but, get to know teammates, build that bond now, get close with these guys now, because once again, you're fighting with your brothers out there when you're playing football. I mean, it is a brotherhood playing football, and you got to be a tight group. You got to be close. You got to be, friends. You got to be willing to do anything for your buddies. And that's what I'm saying. So, this is the opportunity for this roster and this team to really figure that out, get themselves ready to go, get themselves accommodated with one another, and even like styles of play, bringing in a new receiver, a new running back, a new offensive lineman. How does this guy play? I need to learn how this guy plays so I can be next to him, or our games can best accommodate one another. The number six I have here is start to figure out offensive line and secondary. That's going to be a tough one by the spring game, but you're bringing in a ton of guys at both of those positions. And at some point, we got to know, okay, who are the guys? And I know that spring will play a big role in that. But I think you can learn from the way they lift, the way they work with teammates, the way they start to understand the playbook, the way they develop in the new system. You can start a little bit figuring out who are going to be our guys in the secondary and who are going to be our guys on the offensive line. And we know how important those positions are going to be for this 2024 Texas A&M football team. So if you can start developing those guys right now, I think it gets this team set up well for the future. So those are the goals between now and the spring game coming up here in a few months. Stuff this team can do to be ready to rock and roll when that comes around. And I just can't wait for the spring game. That's going to be that just makes it feels that to me always makes it feel like, hey, football's coming and right around the corner. So this is interesting to me. On FanDuel last night, our friends over at FanDuel, a line is out for the Texas A&M Notre Dame game. And we're going to talk about what the line is. But what it means to me is simple. What it means to me is this. There's not going to be a game this year where I think Texas A&M is a massive underdog. We'll talk about what I'm saying coming up right here at Locked On Aggies. But I got to tell you about our wonderful friends over at GameTime. I talk all the time about GameTime and how much I love their service, their app, and what they do. GameTime, going to events, going to a ball game, going to a concert, going to see a comedian, going to do different activities like that, bring us all joy. There's nothing better than getting off work and saying, oh, I'm going to a concert tonight. I'm going to see Zach Bryan. Like, that stuff is awesome, right? But it's expensive nowadays. It is. Some of the competition, GameTime's competition, they're not in the business of getting you to the events you want to go to. They're in the business of making as much money as they can to get you to those events. GameTime is not. GameTime wants to save you money to go to those events that brings everybody joy, makes everybody happy. That's what GameTime wants to do, and it's why I love the service so much. One thing I also love about GameTime is how you can see where your seat is, what it looks like to the stage, to the field. It's a really cool. My dad and I used that picking up some tickets the other day. It's just a ton of fun and easy to use GameTime. And it lets you know, hey, where am I going to sit? What's it going to look like? I love that feature. I love the GameTime app. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with GameTime. Download the GameTime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download GameTime today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed. So before we call it a day here, I want to talk a little bit about this line I saw on FanDuel for the game. So it was -1.5 in this Notre Dame game in the favor of Texas A&M. And what was so crazy about that? Now, there's a ton that's going to go into lines like this. There's a ton. So much is going to change for this roster to Notre Dame's roster before we see pads going on. But we talked about with Texas A&M's schedule being in that perfect place where your tough games are in Kyle Field and your games on the road aren't all that challenging. I talked about, a month ago, I don't think Texas A&M is going to be more than a touchdown underdog in any game this offseason. I really don't. So looking at that and saying to myself, okay, the Aggies are -1.5 in this game. I think it is a great. Now, will that line move? Yeah, I still assume you're going to see Notre Dame be -2.5, 3.5 in that game. But it's interesting to me, and I think it proves that point of, hey, this team is not, a lot of folks are going to be quick to say, well, Texas A&M's not going to win a lot of games. Just coach turnover. They lost all their players, all that. This proves to you that there's not a lot of games this season where Texas A&M is going to be a big underdog. And that's what I'm saying. We talked about last year, Texas A&M couldn't win the close football game. They were a couple close football games flipping over and one touchdown going your way, a made field goal here, away from a couple more wins. And last season looking a whole lot different. If Mike Elko can find a way to win those close games, this is a whole different thing. This is what I'm saying. Texas A&M can compete right now. They're going to have the talent. They've done a great job in the portal. They've still got talent on the roster. They've got guys coming in the 24 class. There's a ton going on this roster. There's a ton of talent, and the schedule is so manageable to where this Texas A&M team is not going to be large underdogs in a lot of games. And I think that if Mike Elko can win the close ones, win the tight football games, Texas A&M can have a really good 2024 season. So while that line doesn't mean a ton, because a ton's going to change, and I can promise you that line's probably not what it's going to be when we get to that ball game months and months down the road. But it was worth bringing up to me because I think it proves that point of, hey, this team is not going to be a large underdog in many football games. That's going to do it for today's episode of Locked On Aggies. Thank you all every day so much for being here. I hope everybody has an outstanding weekend. Enjoy some NFL playoff games. A lot of fun stuff to watch this weekend. Have a great rest of your day today, and we will see you on Monday.